Hi everybody, this is my electrical outside cabinet that I've done a video on previously. I've already connected up electricity from a second consumer unit in the house to this junction box, which I've taken the cap off. It's now time to start connecting things to it. So the first thing I want to do is get myself a plug socket mounted in here. I'm going to put a Wi-Fi extender or AiMesh node, as well as a probably a 4 Ethernet port switch. So I'm going to put this somewhere in there, mounted on the wall like that, and then I'll run cables from inside here through some holes which I'll put in the top, through these cable glands which will clamp onto the cable. So first thing I need to do is get a 2.5mm squared cable off of this common earth, live and neutral, come up and into the socket here. I can then plug in there my Ethernet switch and my Wi-Fi mesh node, and then I've also got, as you can see, some Ethernet cable which runs from my office upstairs, so I can backhaul the Wi-Fi mesh node via Ethernet. So that also needs to come through to the top, which I'll also do via one of these cable glands as well. So it's hard to hold the camera and do the work at the same time, so the first thing I'm going to do is just drill a couple of holes. I've marked out enough for 5 here already, so I'm going to drill the first 2, one for the power supply to the socket, which is 2.5mm squared, 12mm diameter out of core, and then a second one to go through another gland for the Ethernet cable. So I'll be back in a second once I've made a bit of progress. Okay, so back again. So I've drilled 5 holes. I've put 2 of the glands in already. I drilled these with one of these step drills. As you can see there, you can step it down to where you want, so 20mm was perfect for that. So all I need to do now is just screw these in, and then there's a little collet that goes on the back. There we go, that's another one in, so I'll do the other 2 in a second. Now what I need to do is mount the back box for the circuit there. What I'm probably going to do is mount those on some spacers, so then I've got some space to run cables behind that box if I run out of space in the future. So back in a sec with more progress. So this is the plan for the back box for the socket. This is the metal back box. I'm going to mount it on these spacers that you can see there. They're about 20mm, so that would sit on top, which gives you a bit of space underneath, so any cables, when it's mounted inside the electrical cabinet, if I'm a bit tight on space, I can run some cables behind that. So I'm going to go and mount that in the cabinet now, and you'll be able to see what's going on. Okay, so all of 5 cable grommets are now installed and tightened down, ready for cables. I've also put the double socket back box in. There's also a grommet in there, so I can now run 3.5mm squared cable from here through that grommet, loop it at the back through this one, and then onto these terminal blocks, and that gives me power. I'm going to run the Ethernet cable up through this gland, and when I plug the Ethernet extender, or AiMesh node I should say, I can plug it in and use Ethernet backhaul. So next step is to get some cable and run that through. Okay, so I've run the rubberized 2.5mm squared cable from the junction box at the bottom into the circuit. I've tightened down these grommets, which is now clamped nicely onto the rubber sheath, taking any strain away from the conductors. So you can see you just got to wire that in at the bottom to those power blocks, and then wire it in at the top to the back of the socket. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, so that's all wired in. You can see the live, neutral and earth going into the main terminal blocks, and then you can see the socket there is all wired in, plus I've put an extra earth going back to the back box, as that's metal. So all I've got to do now is button that down, and then switch the power back on, and it's all done. Okay, all finished. So the socket's in and connected to the power supply. So the next thing that's going to happen in here is I'm going to put a Wi-Fi node for my ASUS AiMesh. So I plug that in here, and then the Ethernet cable I'm going to plug into a 4-port Ethernet switch, so I've also got some supply to the shed and to the garage at a future date. So see you in the next video.